That day, when you went into the fast food restaurant.
I'm not sure if I can remember. Let me try and think about it.
Gary appeared to be struggling a little. Was it an act? Or was he uncomfortable with the truth as he remembered it now? Originally, I'd been surprised that he had revealed the Seniji persona in our prison session. I wondered if he would do it again, especially under these difficult circumstances. You stopped to go to the bathroom inside the McDonald's restaurant. You also wanted some coffee to keep you alert on your drive.
I remember a little of that. I can see myself at the McDonald's for sure. I remember being there.
Take your time. We have plenty of time, Gary.
Very crowded with people. The restaurant area was crowded, I mean. I went up to the bathroom door. Then I didn't go inside for some reason. I don't know why not. That's funny, but I don't remember.
What were you feeling then, when you remained outside the restroom? Do you remember how you felt?
Agitated. Getting worse. I could feel the blood pumping inside my head. I didn't understand why. I was upset, and I didn't know why.
Seniji Murphy was staring straight ahead. He was looking to the left of where I sat. I was a little surprised at how easy it was for me to forget the courtroom audience that was watching both of us. Was Seniji there in the restaurant? I asked him. He tilted his head slightly. The gesture was oddly touching.
Seniji's in there. Yes, he's in the McDonald's, he became excited, pretending to get coffee. But he looks angry. I think he's really mad. Seniji's a nutcase, a bad seed.
Why is he mad? Do you know? What is it that gets Seniji angry?
I think it's because things got ruined on him. The police were unbelievably lucky. His plan to be famous got screwed up, totally messed up. Now he feels like Bruno Richard Hauptmann. Just another loser.
This was news. He hadn't talked about the actual kidnapping before. I was oblivious to everything in the courtroom. My eyes stayed on Gary Seniji Murphy. I tried to sound as casual and non-threatening as I could. Easy does it. Nice and slow. This was like walking on the edge of a chasm. I could help him, or we could both fall in. What went wrong with Seniji's plan?
Everything that could go wrong, he said.
He was still Gary Murphy. I could see that. He had not transferred into the Seniji personality, but Gary Murphy knew about Gary Seniji's activities. Under hypnosis, Gary Murphy knew Seniji's thoughts. The courtroom remained silent and very still. There wasn't a flicker of motion anywhere in my peripheral vision. More details about the kidnapping came from Gary.
He checked on the Goldberg boy, and the boy was dead. His face was all blue. Must have been too much of the barbiturate. Seniji couldn't believe that he'd made a mistake. He'd been so thorough and careful. He'd talked to anesthesiologists beforehand.
I asked a key question. How did the boy's body get so bruised and beaten? What exactly happened to the Goldberg boy?
Seniji went a little crazy. He couldn't believe his bad luck. He hit the Goldberg boy's body over and over with a heavy shovel.
The way he was talking about Seniji was extremely credible so far. It was possible that he was a multiple personality victim after all. That would change everything about the trial, and possibly the verdict. What shovel was that? I asked. He was talking faster and faster now.
The shovel he used to dig them up. They were buried in the barn. They had an air supply for a couple of days. It was like a fallout shelter, you see. The air system worked beautifully. Everything did. Suniji invented it himself. He built it himself. My pulse was hammering. My throat was very, very dry. What about the little girl? What about Maggie Rose? I asked him. She was fine. Suniji gave her Valium the second time to put her back to sleep. She was terrified, screaming because it was so dark under the ground, pitch black. But it wasn't that bad. Suniji had seen worse himself. The basement. I proceeded very cautiously at this point. I didn't want to lose him here. What about the basement? I tried to get back to the basement later. Where is Maggie Rose now? I asked Gary Murphy. Don't know, he said without hesitation. Not, she's dead. Not, she's alive. Don't know. Why would he block that information? Because he knew I wanted it? Because everyone in that courtroom wanted to know the fate of Maggie Rose Dunn? Suniji went back to get her, he said next. The FBI had agreed to the $10 million ransom. Everything was all set. But she was gone. Maggie Rose wasn't there when Suniji came back again. She was gone. Somebody else had taken the girl out of there. The spectators in the courtroom were no longer quiet, but I still kept my concentration on Gary. Judge Kaplan was reluctant to bang her gavel and ask for order. She did stand up. She motioned for quiet, but it was a useless gesture. Somebody else had taken the girl out of there. Somebody else had the girl now. I rushed in a few more questions before the room went completely out of control, and maybe Suniji Murphy with it. My voice remained soft, surprisingly calm under the circumstances. Did you dig her up, Gary? Did you rescue the little girl from Suniji? Do you know where Maggie Rose is now? I asked him. He didn't like that line of questioning. He was perspiring heavily. His eyelids flickered. Of course not. No. I had nothing to do with any of it. It was Suniji all the way. I can't control him. Nobody can. Don't you understand that? I leaned way forward in my chair. Is Suniji here right now? Is he here with us this morning? Under any other circumstances, I wouldn't have tried to push him this far. Can I ask Suniji what happened to Maggie Rose? Gary Murphy shook his head repeatedly from side to side. He knew something else was happening to him now. It's too scary now, he said. His face was dripping with perspiration and his hair was wet. It's scary. Suniji's real bad news. I can't talk about him anymore. I won't. Please help me, Dr. Cross. Please help me. All right, Gary. That's enough. I brought Gary out of hypnosis immediately. It was the only humane thing to do under the circumstances. I had no choice. Suddenly, Gary Murphy was back in the courtroom with me. His eyes focused on mine. I saw nothing but fear in them. The courtroom crowd was out of control. TV and print reporters rushed to make calls to their newsrooms. Judge Kaplan slammed her gavel over and over again. Somebody else had Maggie Rose Dunn. Was that possible? It's all right, Gary, I said. I understand why you were afraid. He stared at me. Then his eyes very slowly trailed around the loudly buzzing courtroom. What happened? He asked. What just happened in here? Chapter 63. I still remembered some Kafka, in particular, the chilling opening of Kafka's The Trial. Someone must have been telling lies about Joseph K., for without having done anything wrong, he was arrested one fine morning. That was what Gary Murphy wanted us to believe. That he was trapped in a nightmare,
that he was as innocent as Joseph K. I had my picture taken a couple of dozen times as I left the courthouse. Everybody had a question to ask. I had no comments to make. I never miss a good chance to shut up. Was Maggie Rose still alive? The press wanted to know. I wouldn't say what I thought, which was that she probably wasn't. As I was leaving the courthouse, I saw Catherine and Thomas Dunn walking toward me. They were flanked by TV and print news people. I wanted to talk to Catherine, but not to Thomas. "Why are you helping him?" Thomas Dunn raised his voice. "Don't you know he's lying? What's wrong with you, Cross?" Thomas Dunn was extremely tense and red-faced, out of control. The veins in his forehead couldn't have been more prominent. Catherine Rose looked miserable, completely desolate. "I've been called as a hostile witness," I said to the Dunns. "I'm doing my job, that's all." "Well, you're doing your job badly," Thomas Dunn continued to attack me. "You lost our daughter in Florida. Now you're trying to free her kidnapper." I'd had enough from Thomas Dunn, finally. He'd made personal attacks on me in the press and on TV. As much as I wanted to get his daughter back, I wasn't about to take any more abuse from him. "The hell I am!" I shouted back, as cameras shushed and whirred around us. "I've had my hands tied. I've been taken off the case on a whim, then put back on. And I'm the only one who's gotten any results." I whirled away from both the Dunns and headed down a steep flight of stairs. I understood their anguish, but Thomas Dunn had been badgering me for months. He'd gotten personal, and he was wrong. Nobody seemed to get one simple fact. I was the one still trying to get at the truth about Maggie Rose. I was the only one. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, Catherine Rose came up from behind. She had run after me. Photographers had followed her. They were everywhere, their automatic film wasters clicking like crazy. The press was elbowing in. "I'm sorry about all that," she said before I could manage a word. "Losing Maggie is destroying Tom, destroying our marriage. I know you've done your best. I know what you've gone through. I'm sorry, Alex. I'm sorry for everything." It was a strange, strange moment. I finally reached out and took Catherine Rose Dunn's hand. I thanked her and promised her I wouldn't stop trying. The photographers continued to snap pictures. Then I quickly left the scene, refusing to answer another question, absolutely refusing to tell them what had just passed between Catherine Rose and myself. Silence is the best revenge with the press jackals. I headed home. I was still searching for Maggie Rose Dunn, but inside Saniji Murphy's mind now. Could she have been taken from the kidnapping site by somebody else? Why would Gary Murphy tell us that she had? As I drove into Southeast, I wondered about what Gary Murphy had said under hypnosis. Was Gary Saniji setting us all up beautifully in the courtroom? That was a scary possibility, and a very real one. Was all this part of one of his terrifying plans? The next morning, I tried to put Saniji Murphy under hypnosis a second time. The amazing detective, Dr. Cross, was back on center stage. That's how it sounded in the morning news, anyway. The hypnosis didn't work this time. Gary Murphy was too frightened, or so his lawyer claimed. There was too much hubbub in the crowded courtroom. The room was cleared once by Judge Kaplan, but that didn't help either. I was cross-examined by the prosecution that day, but Mary Warner was more interested in getting me off the stand than in questioning my credentials. My part in the trial was over, which was just fine by me. Neither Sampson nor I came to court for the rest of that week, a time of more expert testimony. We went back on the street. We had new cases. We also tried to rework a couple of troubling angles concerning the actual day of the kidnapping. We reanalyzed everything.